Hello, I'm Peter Machin. Welcome to my podcast. Helen Walne is a writer and underwater photographer whose work recently graced the cover of Time magazine. She is also the author of The Diving, a novel about her brother's suicide. I spoke to Helen about the remarkable underwater world that she documents so exquisitely, and about the journey of loss and grief that led her to discover that world. I hope you enjoy our conversation. And if you like this podcast, please share it with everyone you know. And don't forget to click on the like and subscribe buttons. Here's me and Helen.
Hello, Helen.
Hello, Peter.
Hello, Helen.
Hello.
I this last thing. It's really, it's much harder interviewing people I know well.
Yeah.
Than, like people whose work I know, but I don't know them well. So
I know. I was thinking that earlier.
Yeah. Hello, Helen.
I don't know you.
No, we'll acknowledge the friendship. Hello, Helen. Thank you so much for talking to me. It's a real pleasure. I've been really looking forward to this, and as you know, we've tried to do it quite a few times before.
I think the last time was my fault. I really do. Well, actually, it was both of our faults. Everything was collapsing.
Yeah, no, it's definitely both of our faults. For anyone listening, we started this interview about 2 months ago, and it was going pretty well. And then both of our technology systems just collapsed completely. So we're starting again.
Good.
Helen, I want to dig straight into like what I'm going to call your process. But before you get nervous, I'm not talking about the artistic process. I want to talk about the actual protest, the process of you diving underwater, taking the photographs. Because I think it's really, really easy when we're on our Instagram phones and we're scrolling. It's really easy to forget that those photographs actually have to be taken. So I want to talk about the process of you actually diving underwater. Like you don't use scuba doo. You don't use scuba doo. You don't use Scooby-Dooby-Doo. You don't use a scuba. You do use snorkel. So can we talk about that process?
I don't Scooby-Dooby-Doo. So I just do free diving. Well, it's not even that. I can't even really call it free diving because my breath hold is less than a minute, which makes the photography way more impressive almost. So it takes me a while to get into being in the water with my camera. It takes me about 20 minutes until I feel like I know where I am and what I'm looking at and what I want to capture. And by that time, most of my dive buddies have already got out because it's too cold. So I'm generally on my own, which I know is not recommended, but I don't care. So I actually love diving on my own. You know, it's like writing a book. You don't want someone leaning over your shoulder. So essentially, it's take a deep breath at the surface, go down, mostly about 6 to 7 meters, sometimes less. And then pretty much I'm always just drawn to where the light is. So if I see light sort of flickering among the kelp, then that's where I'll go. And then kind of look and get... It's actually amazing because what I do is I wait for the light to change. And as the kelp moves, the sunlight comes through the sort of the blades of the kelp in a different way. So you have to basically just hope that you can hold your breath long enough for when the light changes to that absolute specific second that you can then take the picture. Come to the surface, pant, and then repeat. So that's pretty much how it goes.
Cool. It's interesting you take 20 minutes because I when I take photographs, it's a much less complicated process. But if I have an idea and a setup or any kind of conceptual thing, okay, I want to go and film these trees doing that or whatever. Like it's never a case that I just arrive and start taking the photographs. I always just have to relax into being there before I can get going.
No, so I don't wear a wetsuit, and the water here is pretty cold. The one side where I dive can get down to, I think I've dived in 9 degrees before, and usually it's around 11. So I think also the cold helps me to kind of get into some kind of weird flow state as well. So it's almost like those first 20 minutes are adapting to the sensory feeling of the water and the cold as well as what I'm looking at. But I also think it's because I do get like sensory overload. So I almost have to settle into a place for those 20 minutes before I actually can orientate myself. And then be in it, looking within it from within, rather than just looking at it from the outside.
Yeah. That's kind of my next question, but it just suddenly occurred to me, knowing what I know about both you and me, is that I think we probably also take 20 minutes to like acclimatize to a new social setting if we go to a bar or somewhere. So I think that
I
might
think it
be
takes me
part
about
of
an hour. An hour and 3 glasses of wine, and then I'll be fine.
I'm fine.
I'm
I'm fine about
fine.
wine. So beyond the physical experience, as you were intimating, and beyond what happens in the photograph, what happens in your mind when you go below the surface of the water?
So I think the first 5 minutes are a lot of discombobulation, but once the settling has happened, it's almost like I leave my body, and it honestly is a flow state. And I know that's a terrible pun to make, but it's time and space just disappear, and I'm essentially just, I feel not like a fish, but I feel like I'm part of the kelp forest, and that I'm not just looking at it. Yeah, it's quite a weird feeling, and it's can be quite dangerous because I get so fixated on something. Like I came across this beautiful, very rare jellyfish one day, and I just couldn't get enough of it. It's like being hungry, and I was photographing it, and I lose complete awareness of my surroundings. And apparently, somebody watching said a seal had been circling me the whole time. And I don't know if you know, but our seals have had this terrible outbreak of rabies, unprecedented rabies, and some of them are quite aggressive. And I hadn't even noticed. So it's like everything just disappears, and then the only things that are left is just this absolute mind-blowing magical place. Yeah.
And if you dive without your camera, how different is that experience?
It's very different. I call it going pure, and I don't go pure very often. It's a very weird experience. I feel jumpy. I feel really unable to sync my breath up with my body and the ocean and my mind. And it should be the opposite. So it's super interesting. It's almost like I can't connect properly with the kelp forest without my camera. And you'd think it should be the opposite. Yeah. Yeah. I very rarely go without it. It's almost like it's a conduit.
Yeah. I mean, so when I was younger, I would take my camera all over the place, like in places that were pretty dangerous to be taking a camera. But it felt in a way like the camera was a conduit for me being safe, which doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
And that's definitely not the case for everyone.
No, it doesn't make sense, and I'm quite self-conscious about it because I feel like I should just be able to connect without, technology or apparatus. But the thing is like I can't. The way that I make sense of the world, even if I go hiking in the mountains, I take my camera. And the one of the ways that I can make sense of where I am is to take photographs from water. So, I mean, we've been hiking in the mountains often. I've even got my weight belt on. I've got like snorkel. I've got my mask, and I'm lugging my massive camera because just in case I find a stream or a river, and then I can make sense of stuff. It's rather bizarre and quite inconvenient as well.
Look, I mean, on one level, that sounds totally bizarre, but on another level, it's just kind of that's what artists do, and that's what art is. Like at least on one fundamental level, it's just like how we make sense of the world. Whether that whatever that art is, whether it's writing a performance or taking pictures. It's how we make reality. And so in a way, like you take away the camera that has become such a central part of you, and one of your reality making tools is gone. So what do you do?
Yeah, it's true. I know, but it's much more convenient to have like a little pocket of paintbrushes and some paint than and a camera, and then having to sniff out some water, essentially.
So you started with a disposable camera or cheap underwater camera?
Yeah. It was my husband's action camera, and it didn't have a back screen, so I had no idea what I was taking, which I kind of liked. And now, and then I've almost gone back to that now with film camera.
Yeah, I was speaking to Roger Ballin about the difference between film and digital, and he is pretty much a digital convert now, which I'm actually quite amazed and impressed by. But he does talk about what gets lost. And I miss the days of just random slide film.
Yeah, exactly. Because I started with the bad fake GoPro, and it didn't take bad pictures actually, but often there was like, just like half a piece of kelp and nothing else because I didn't know what I was doing. And then I got a smaller compact camera, an Olympus, which was incredible. They're incredible underwater cameras with no housing, just the most insane cameras. And then I got a mirrorless with housing, which I use most of the time. And then recently I bought a Nikonos, and they're from the 80s. And it's a film camera, and it's a completely different beast. It's difficult.
How many images? How much work have you done with that new camera?
I've shot 2 rolls of film. Yeah, 2 rolls of film, both of them black and white. And I realized that basically you have to judge distance, focus, distance of focus distance. And when you're underwater, distance is distorted. So I have these horrific, like grainy pictures of urchins and someone's foot. So yeah, I have a lot to learn. It's really difficult. I think it's the most difficult thing I've done, but I'm going to persist.
Yeah, I think like there's something to be said for like hurling oneself into the difficulty, putting yourself at its mercy.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. Even if it doesn't work, it's just, I wish that it was less expensive.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love the experience of taking a roll of film and then sending it away, and then you wait. It's like waiting for Christmas, until you get it back, and then you're like, oh my God, there's only like one that's decent. But yeah, I'll get better.
I remember that feeling.
Maybe not.
I remember the first time I ever took a roll of film to get developed. Well, the first time I ever took a roll of pictures that I'd taken with a kind of artistic intent, as opposed to a snapshot.
Yes.
And I think I had 24, and they gave me 3 photographs. And I was like, what? They were like, no, none of the others are proper photographs. And I looked at the next. I was like, no, that's what I intended. I wanted them to look like that.
That is so funny.
So I always had to leave special instructions. Please print them all, even if you don't think they're photographs. Because all of my photographs come
That's brilliant. Your photographs are lovely, kelp, by the way. Talk about kelp. What would you like to know about kelp?
Yeah, you developed a real relationship with kelp and various kelp forests around the world.
I have, and seaweed. I mean, kelp is technically a seaweed, but I like to see it as its own, its own thing. Um, I think what blows my mind that even though kelp is an algae, it's not a plant, okay, but it looks like a plant. And the fact that these organisms can live in salt water is just blows my mind. It really just blows my mind. You know, that these plant-like things exist in salt water and in these immense storms. You'll see kelp just like bending and flowing with the waves, and you're like, how can you withstand this? How is this possible? Um, it's and there's so many beautiful things about it, and there's so many different types of kelp across the world. And I mean, if you just look at a blade of kelp in the sun, it's just this coppery color, and they sustain so much life. I mean, I don't know how much you know about kelp, and just tell me to shut up if you think I'm geeking out too much. So they don't have roots because they're not like plants that draw nutrients from soil because they don't have soil, right? But they have these things called holdfasts, and they're these incredible root-like looking structures that anchor them to mostly rocks and reefs, but mostly rocks. And within those holdfasts, there's like cities of creatures, from like tiny little amphipods to, okay, I'm completely geeking out here, but they sustain these entire cities of animals. And I've seen them under the microscope, and it just blows your mind, like little worms and little like brittle stars. So kelp is just rad. It's unlike anything else on Earth.
Yeah. So I didn't know that it was the plant until right now. I mean, maybe I did know that, but I've forgotten it. But I definitely didn't consciously know that it was a plant. And so I've always been kind of afraid of kelp and seaweed. But I think especially as an Indian Ocean swimmer, you know, they're low-level sharks. They're things in the water that are trying to get me. So I've always, even as a kid, I was always a little bit afraid, and they were a bit slimy, a bit rubbery. But I also always thought that kelp had a sentience, and now I'm more convinced that it might, since it's not a normal plant. Not that, I mean, I think plants do have sentience, but just like not in the same way. Do you think kelp is more sentient than land-based plants?
I do, but I'm just biased, I think. Yeah, I'm just biased.
But your bias is informed by experience.
For me, it does. Precisely. Although, I mean, I do love a land forest. And I do love a tree. But I haven't spent as long in them. And I don't know, there's something incredible about the 3D-ness of kelp and the way that it has a surface as well. So it kind of flows on the surface and underneath. So it's sort of contained in this incredibly weird, fluid 3D environment. Whereas trees just kind of blow in the wind. Trees. I'm looking out my window now at some trees, and I've just apologized to them.
But I think that's also because we tend to flatten our vision. Like something that I'm super aware of, and especially in spring in Berlin, is the three-dimensionality of plants. And but it's really easy to just walk past a two-dimensional object. But then if you start going inside them, just there's incredible layers, and it's really, you know, it becomes very kind of like a 3D movie, which is weird because life is also like three-dimensional, like a 3D movie. But we tend to forget it. So I do find plants really sentient. When I walk past, you know, like a tree or bush of flowers, I do get some sense of communication from it. But with kelp, I feel a little bit more, and maybe that's also because part of me thinks that kelp wants to take me down.
That's you're not. That is a very common feeling about kelp. But what is on the opposite end of that is that kelp, when you are freediving in the kelp forest, it actually helps you because you hang on to it. You hang on to the stipe, which is the kind of like trunk. And so I usually take photographs just with one hand because my other hand is holding onto a kelp stipe. Also, when the great whites were still around, unfortunately they have disappeared for various reasons, but when they were still around, the kelp, they wouldn't generally go into the kelp forest. They would stop at that border of the kelp forest. So one always felt very safe in it. So it's actually friendly and safe and supportive.
Cool. Well, my very next question in my little list on my like sticky note here is about encountering large marine animals, mammals and fish. Like I'm terrified. I like I love swimming in the sea. It's like this incredible sense of freedom, but every shadow is a shark. How like so when you encounter these large animals, whether they're seals or sharks or whales, like how do you respond and like how do you feel?
I think the biggest animal I have encountered many times and still do is the short-tailed stingray, and they can be, I don't know, 3 meters wide. They weigh, I don't know, good hundreds of kilograms. And they were also known for having killed Steve Irwin. And when I come across them, I am not scared one tiny little bit, and I know how to approach them. And I know this sounds like I'm some sort of animal whisperer thingy, but I'm not. It's just like you basically the rules. You don't corner them. You don't make them feel trapped. You approach them mostly just from the side. You keep your distance, and I just feel complete awe and wonder when I see them. I don't ever think that they've got malicious intent, because they don't. That's just our kind of perception. And I do confess. I mean, I have friends who'd be like, "Oh my God, I just want to see a great white," and I do not want to see a great white. I don't.
Fair enough.
I'm scared. Fair enough. The closest thing that I have seen was a mako shark, which can be a little bit aggressive if they're feeling grumpy that day. We went diving with some blue sharks who are also very curious. I mean, they're not aggressive, they're curious. So the blue sharks were very curious. You had to kind of bump them, push them away with your glove. And then a mako shark came along and unexpectedly, and no one else saw it. And then I was showing the dive people afterwards. I was like, "Oh my God, look at this shark." And they're like, "Whoa, that was a mako." But I didn't know. So I felt fine.
Yeah.
I did notice its teeth though. Yeah.
I think I would just be terrified. On land, I haven't had an encounter like a lion or anything, but I have had encounters with kind of medium-sized animals that could hurt me if they wanted, and I've always felt pretty fine. But I think if like a shark would be different, I think I just go straight to panic mode.
And they move so fast as well. I mean, I think also nowadays with the rabies in the seals, there have been a few attacks, and people have been pretty bitten up. And now those are the animals that I'm actually quite fearful of. I bumped into one the other day in the kelp forest, and it was a big seal, and I actually started sort of hyperventilating, but tried to stay calm, and it was perfectly chilled. Didn't have rabies, and it just swam around me, but it was quite unnerving.
Yeah. That strain of rabies, is that the same strain of rabies as domestic dogs carry?
I think so, and so it's unprecedented. It's never been seen. I think there was one incident, but like hundreds of years ago in Norway. I might be wrong here, but it's unprecedented in marine mammals. And the theory is that it came from Namibia, where a lot of seals live, and that a jackal might have been infected with rabies and then bitten, or vice versa, had an interaction with a seal, and then that's moved all the way down the coast. But it's really sad. It really is, because they basically just go bonkers, and they also get thin and die eventually, and it's just awful.
Yeah, seems to be
Yeah.
another leakage from our fucked up human world into what's left of the environment. I
Yeah,
mean,
it is. It's
maybe it
the
would
it's
happen
the
anyway.
imbalance, and yeah, exactly. But I can't help thinking, because I mean the great whites disappearing is a combination of two orcas that kind of chase them out, but also of overfishing and things like that. And if they were still around, we've often thought, well, maybe it was the great whites. Maybe there always have been sick seals who were then controlled by the great whites. So who knows? I don't know. It's not proven.
That kind of does make sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
yeah, it is. I mean, I'm just thinking about the decimation that we are, the human species. So have in the past spent so many wonderful afternoons on Battery Beach, swimming with you and our friends and stuff many years ago. And at some point, the seagulls disappeared, but I never noticed them going. I only noticed when there were none. And that's probably related to the fact that there are no fish off the coast of Durban, because they've all been taken, they've all been fished. Just jellyfish, pretty much.
Yeah, when you told me that, I had no idea. I was like, how is that possible that there are no seagulls? Do you think it's still the case?
I mean, maybe they've come back. They hadn't last time I was there. But it was also interesting that no one had noticed that they'd gone.
Yes.
The fishermen have
because
not noticed that there hardly any fish in the sea, or basically no fish in the Durban Ocean. So that's why. And also in other parts of the world where, like in Canada, I know there's an issue of seagulls lacking sustenance from the ocean, but they can move inland to the rivers. But our rivers are so fucked, like you can't eat fish from Durban rivers, you'll get sick.
Yeah.
So anyway, on that happy note, have you ever had any trouble with wild seas?
With wild seas? Oh. Well, it depends, because it depends on your abilities and perceptions of what a wild sea is. So when I first started going into the water, I decided it would be a really good idea to go free diving on my own when I'd only done it twice before. And I thought it was a really, really good idea to have a weight belt that had double the amount of weight that I needed. Choice, classic, brilliant. Went into the water, started essentially drowning. I could barely keep my nose like above the surface of the water because the weight belt was so heavy. And I perceived then at the time that the swell was huge and I was going to die. I got smashed up on the rocks. I had to be rescued by the NSRI, which was so humiliating. I was bleeding all over, and when they brought me ashore, they were like, "Are you okay? We need to take you to hospital." And I was so mortified that I just said, "No, I'm fine," and then I just ran away to my car and then cried. So I perceived those seas to be wild, but I wouldn't say. But as you become more experienced, you learn that it's not. I used to get panic attacks after that. Whenever there was a bit of swell, I would be like, "Oh my God, I'm going to die." And now I go into fairly rough seas, and it's fine. You realize that you've just got to go. You've got to just pretend that you're the sea and go with it.
Yeah.
And not fight against it. But I don't go in if it's wild. I mean, that's just stupid.
Yeah, no, sure. There's a kind of strong technical aspect to swimming comfortably in the sea, just knowing how it operates, knowing when to surrender to it and when to fight it, and how to
Yeah.
swim out of things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And the
I've
more
always
anxious,
had
the more you panic, the worse it is.
Yeah. Right now I know just, dive underneath, try to work out which way the water's going and, go where, go at 90 degrees and you'll probably be okay. And we can also breathe for much longer than we think we can.
Yeah. That whole
Or hold
mammalian
on,
reflex thing. Yeah.
Is 1 minute your absolute record, or is that just, roughly about how long you can hold your breath for?
I said less than 1 minute.
Okay.
Would you like to know? I think the longest. Pardon?
Have you tested it?
I've started testing it, and so now what I do if when I'm in the water now, I basically go and practice, and I go down and I'll hold onto a rock, and then I just stay still. But staying still is very different from moving around. So when I do that, I can do more than a minute, probably like 1 minute 10, which is not great in the great scheme of things. But to be honest, mostly I'm generally around 33 seconds, which is not a lot at all.
Yeah, that's not a lot of time. And I mean, that's one of my main things about, like, it's just, emphasizing the fact that you are just, doing free diving. 33 seconds isn't a long time to go down, find the shot, get the shot, and come back up.
No, it's not. That's why you have to do it about 100 times.
Yeah. So I want to ask you the thing about breath. Like, so every time I ever take a photograph, I hold my breath. And for me, and I think many people do, and for me, the photograph basically is finished on the exhale. What I want to ask you is, it feels like it's possible that when you take the photograph is only finished when you come up. Is that true? Does that feel true at all?
I think it's like halfway up, but yes, definitely. That's the process. Is the going down is basically the drive to, the kind of the journey. No, can't use that word. Basically, the getting down there is just the trip, and then once you're there, then you take the photograph. No, so it's actually just in that time, actually, and then the going up is returning.
Okay, so you've got the image as you take it.
Yeah, but not necessarily, because then you kind of look at it on the surface and you're like, geez, that's so shit. And so then you go up and down about for as long as it takes, which is why I often end up just in one spot. I end up in one spot for like an hour. And it's always changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I take an extraordinary number of photographs of trees and details of flowers and stuff. And I can breathe, I don't have to come and go. And I was still like, within the space of a few seconds, like, that thing I wanted is gone. And, I'll try to find something else in another shape.
Yeah, exactly.
So you spoke about the 11-degree water and the 9-degree water. And I just want to emphasize for anybody who is listening that 11 degrees in the water feels much, much colder than 11 degrees in the wind or the air. It feels like 3 degrees, I want to say. The Atlantic Ocean always feels like it's just off the edge of freezing, except for maybe on a very warm summer day. So that experience is cold. It's icy. It's not just, cold. It's so I can't last more than 10 minutes in the Atlantic. I can swim for 4 hours in the Indian Ocean, and it's incredible freedom for me. And sadly, I cannot extract that sense of freedom and liberation from the Atlantic Ocean. How do you cope with staying in the water so long? Is it a feat of endurance? Is, you're a strong female, you have power? Is there a discomfort that you have to fight, or do you kind of get used to it?
I think I'm physically lucky to be able to do it. I don't know why. I am a sturdy woman, so I think that helps. But I think for me, quite a lot of it is mental. So when I get in and it's really cold, it's often that the first 5 minutes that everyone says is the most difficult, right? Um, and when I get in, I trick my brain and I tell my brain to not to shut up, but that it's not bad at all. And then it's almost like I'm able to leapfrog that first 5 minutes and ignore it. Maybe I just have such cognitive dissonance that I'm able to just pretend that those few minutes don't exist, and then I kind of leapfrog into just being in the water. Um, I must say though, I think it's also a state of mind. It's like when I was feeling really, really beaten up by grief and loss and everything else, I felt that I was much more able to go into the water and not think about it. And then I think that I was almost like steely in some way. And now that I am feeling a lot better and but more vulnerable at the same time, it's not as easy as it used to be.
Interesting.
Which is interesting.
Just talking to that first thing of trying to trick your body. So, like I said, I can't do 10 minutes Atlantic, but I have for the last pretty much half my lifetime. I take a cold shower after my warm bath or warm shower. And within that cold shower can be, like between 5 and 7 degrees in the winter. And it's I can't not do it because it really invigorates me, but it's always slightly unpleasant. But I do just trick myself. I pretend that I'm outside in my Durban garden where I had an outside shower and it wasn't cold. And I just pretend I'm there. And that works every time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, next time I'm in the Atlantic, I'm going to try that.
Just amazing to think how many other things we trick ourselves about.
Yeah. A lot of other things. Like, I mean, there's a rabbit hole about like our current economic model, our social realities.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Everything in a way. And our perceptions are, like in some sense illusion based, and we, work with those. Sorry, I have my little list of questions here open on the screen. So now I want to get to this part that you like. Can we talk a little bit about your journey to underwater photography, which also means we need to talk a little bit about your novel, The Diving, your beautifully written novel, and your brother Richard. Are you happy to talk about that?
Yep. Sure. It's
yeah, that's a lot in one sentence. I realize it.
So people ask me how I ended up doing underwater photography, and I honestly can't really answer them very clearly because I don't know. It's like, is it like you decide to take up a hobby like running? Like, where does that come from? When people are like, oh, I'm going to start running. Or is it informed by something else? And because of where it came from and the timing of it, I feel like it came from somewhere else. I don't believe, I'm not a religious person, but I do think that there was some weird synchronicity, something going on, because I started taking photographs a few months after my brother Richard ended his life in the ocean, pretty much where I felt like I was drowning that day when I had too many weights on, which is in itself bizarre in a way, because I don't think I knew that was the exact spot. So also, I had never really liked the ocean before that. I'd always been really, really scared of it, and I much preferred being on land. I just was not a water person at all. So the whole thing, and sometimes it can be quite awkward for me when people ask, how did you start doing this? Thinking like, oh, I went to the Caribbean and I had my thingy and I decided to do it. But it's like, it's not a hobby for me. Let me say that. So I do definitely think that it's linked to, and I think that whole thing of me having to be in water to understand the world and my own reality and myself is very much connected to the source of it in some way. I don't know how. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, something that like preoccupies me quite a lot, and I mean, I know it sounds quite wanky, but like it is a real thing. I mean, we all do it. Is the way that our life functions as a metaphor for itself. Um, and you know that can sound highfalutin, but even if we have money or we don't have money, that is both a factual state and a set of constraints, but it's also a metaphor for ourselves, and we certainly use it that way, and not just money but anything. um, so in that sense, like, do you spend much time thinking about like the metaphoric meaning of going underwater and how it relates to your life, or does that just kind of get lost in the lived experience?
No, it doesn't. No, it does. I mean, of course, one thinks about the metaphors that are really usually really cheesy. It's like
Yeah.
go with the flow, or don't fight it. Just or the tide comes in and then the tide goes out, and
Yeah.
but I think for me, a lot of it is a lived experience, in that it's not a metaphor per se, but because I've lost my whole primary family, two brothers, my sister, and my parents. Um, I have a thing that I call shrining. So I have these various places in the kelp forest that are shrines, living shrines, to the various people. Not not two, because that would be taking away from the sort of autonomy of nature. But it's where I go
Yeah.
to visit. Um, and each one is very representative of that person. So my mum's shrine, for example, is this beautiful little crack that is just full of pink fans, because she did love a pink. Um, my dad's one is this beautiful place with all this golden sea fans everywhere. So each one of them has a place, and when I go there, um, it's not like I feel them intimately, but it's definitely they'll be on my mind when I'm there.
I mean, that makes sense. And if you think about most cemeteries, they're usually in things that resemble forests, on land.
Yeah.
So the
Hmm.
kind of parallel, it's kind of actually kind of normal in a sense, except you're doing it underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But it's also interesting because I'm not a very ritualistic person, so it's quite weird how that just happened. It's not like
Yeah.
I went out and chose one. It was just like this one just said, "Look at me. You know, I like pink."
Yeah. But I think that ritual is so embedded in the human experience that it calls to us, even if even if it's not something we're comfortable with. Like, and
Hmm. I
especially
agree.
rituals around death and remembrance and grief. Like, I think it's just something we
Yeah.
have to do.
And I think
Um,
also in our very own ways. I don't think it can be imposed on anyone. So many people have said, you need to get rituals, to grieve properly. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Like, the normal rituals of like lighting a candle, which I believe can feel really nice, but it's just not my thing. So I'm very grateful that I have found my own, yeah, not even found, that it came to me.
and also, I got to say, it's really hard to light a candle underwater. I mean, it is.
Yeah, that's this is
uh,
so true. Yes, so true.
um, You recently started taking photographs of bodies in water, and particularly female
Mm,
bodies. I want to ask you a little bit about this
mm.
project, but I also just want to ask you about to what extent you feel that diving itself is gendered. Like, did you feel like basically were there any men who felt you were getting in on their turf when you started diving and taking photographs?
Um, what's interesting, maybe in the beginning, and I still have it sometimes. I guess when I first started, it was about 10 years ago. So now, in the last few years, it's become really popular. And in fact, most people I see diving are women now, which is amazing. But in the beginning, they were often, kind of bros, who might spear gunfish on weekends. And I have had a few comments of, I had a classic one the other day that said, this guy said, he looked at my camera and he said, "Wow, that's an impressive setup." And I was like, "Yep." And then he said, "Oh, is it yours? Are you carrying it down for someone?" And I think also being a middle-aged woman carrying a big camera, um, is quite baffling to some people, to some men. But I must say, a lot of the men I know who I do dive with are lovely, really lovely, and but there is like any kind of sort of outdoor activity, there are always the bros who I wouldn't choose to even kind of dive with anyway. So if I do go with other people, it's generally women who are,
Yeah.
for me, so much more comfortable in the water. I don't know, just so much more. Um, they look like they belong there.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I've like it's funny. So I've always been. I think that everybody kind of relaxes in the water, but maybe women do more than men, and maybe women are awesome. You know, their physicalities are more demanded of on land than men's in some ways. Um,
Yeah, that's so true. There's a real visceral response when you see women in the water compared to men, and I'm not being. I probably am sounding terrible, but women are often they move much more slowly, and they seem to notice things a lot more. Whereas men seem to want to go from one place to the next. Like I've dived with a few guys like that, and they kind of like want to go deep, quite deep, and they want to fin really quickly and go and look at this and go and look at this and go and look at this. Whereas the women that I dive with, we generally just hang out in one spot and look at stuff.
yeah,
But I'm not saying it's like that with all men. Yeah, I
yeah.
just
I mean, of
obviously
course not.
haven't
No
found the right
sentence about
place.
all men or all women is ever going to
Mm.
make sense. Um,
Exactly.
But I have
Yeah.
always been fascinated about how people's bodies change in the sea, and I think when I think about that, I am actually thinking specifically of women, but generally of people as well. And there is a
Mm.
relaxing, maybe a surrender,
Mm.
and I find it true even if they're scared of the sea, even if they're scared of drowning, there's still a
Mm.
kind of I don't say okayness with their body, but also just surrender to the liquid. Like it feels like all of our insecurities kind of just like evaporate,
Yeah.
and maybe in the face of just like the vague mortality that the seas, is. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when I've been doing this project with women who never signed up to do naked photography with me, all of them are pretty much strangers to me. It's a very bizarre WhatsApp group that I have, which is wonderful, of 200 odd women dying to be photographed naked. But we started out doing
Underwater.
it with bathing suits on, and then there came a point when someone said, "I don't want this on. I want to take it off." And then suddenly, everyone had their bathing suits off, and yeah, and it was just such a vulnerability and so beautiful though. And then everyone was just so relaxed with each other, and they mostly didn't know one another either. And it was a
Huh.
diverse range of ages and bodies, um, And this one woman was quite shy at first, and she just says, I really don't like my body. And I just said, look, everybody looks beautiful in water. It renders us to be the best kind of people, of physical being. I don't know if it's because we were born in fluid. I'm not sure, but
Yeah, I mean, maybe because, like, I think people are more beautiful in the sea than in swimming pools. But even swimming pools, that thing starts to happen.
yeah,
And the freedom
yeah,
of swimming naked in the sea is extraordinary.
yeah. I think the thing about swimming pools is the walls. I think it makes a difference.
Yeah, you're still in a room,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah.
And also, I mean, two things. I mean, those images are exquisite. Like, there's what the refraction of the water does, but also it's like, I mean, the light underwater, like even on a grey, overcast day, like light coming in it's just one of the most
Mm.
beautiful things. It always
Yes,
has been.
it really is.
Like,
It
it's
really is. I know.
like a
Yeah,
Renaissance painting.
I'm obsessed. Exactly, exactly. Yeah. But with that project, and it's an ongoing thing. I just haven't done it for a bit, but um, it's. I wanted it also to be an antidote to, there are a lot of underwater photographs of women, sort of wearing ball gowns or, I mean, the ones I took are quite ethereal, I guess, but a lot of the ones that are out there are, you know, stereotypically beautiful bodies, norm, yeah, that sort of thing. And I really wanted a diverse range of ages and bodies, and it wasn't really about the bodies in a lot of ways. It was just about the people,
Yeah.
and the connection. Like I didn't even care what came out of it. I didn't even think of an outcome. I just wanted to do the process and do it with people.
And I presume for them it was, in general, a liberating experience. I mean, I'm presuming.
I
You get that sense.
Yes. So we stay in for as long as people can stay in, and it's such an interesting thing. It's transformative. A lot of them have said that it's transformative, because we're all strangers in the beginning and wearing our clothes and feeling a bit awkward and making small talk, and then afterwards, there's a lot of giggling and laughing during the process, and then afterwards, I bring cake and which the baboons often steal, but and tea and whatever else, and then it's just suddenly everyone's like friends, and there's this invigorated kind of spirit that happens. Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing to be able to give people.
No, I mean, I can see that because I just think, especially in this day and age, but I think in all time, I think we all have such giant issues with representation of our bodies, and if you can resolve that even just for an afternoon and hopefully for longer, I think that's probably a really
Yeah,
healing thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you ever dive at night?
I've dived at night twice, um, and I'm not sure I loved it so much.
Yeah.
I had a torch, but it made me feel a little bit jumpy.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I
Yeah.
mean, the sea is
You
a
see
pretty
really cool
scary place.
creatures.
Yeah, well, that's what I was
Yeah,
imagining.
yeah,
Um, I
yeah,
mean, I have swum underwater. I've swum at night, and it's
mm.
always beautiful and amazing, but also like fucking scary. Like even if the sea's
Yeah,
calm, moonlight, no one on the beach, you know you're safe.
yeah,
It's still
yeah,
like something we shouldn't be doing it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, you can only see, yeah, with a torch, you've got like a, I don't know, like a circumference of light that's probably like 2 meters, and then beyond that, who knows? Probably just mostly crabs, like having a good time. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's unnerving.
Our waters are pretty dangerous, Durban and Cape Town. But I remember swimming on a Goa beach where it was fine, just like by the shore, like nothing out to get you. It's still just like like this is quickly in and out because you're just so scared that no, I think you're so scared that somehow the great subconscious is just going to consume you. Like
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. Yeah, yeah, that is perfectly said. Yeah, totally.
yeah.
That's beautiful.
And even on a beautiful, calm, easy swimmable day, there is always that thing about the sea that it might just take you randomly for no reason, even if it's completely illogical.
Yeah, yeah, no, completely. And yeah, I mean, in those early days, I used to feel like that. I used to feel like it was out to get me, and I think part of that was also related to Richard choosing to die in the sea. I kind of it kind of was an adversary, so I kind of figured it would come and seek me out in some way.
Yeah,
But yeah, I don't feel like that anymore.
yeah. That makes sense, and a lot to just deal with. Like
Yeah.
uh, so. That's an extraordinary amount of meaning compressed into a very simple action,
Mm.
which is
Yeah.
maybe part of the broader human difficulty that we face when doing so many other things too. How do you feel when you are in a river or a dam or a lake as opposed to the sea, taking images?
The same.
The same. No
Yeah.
quantitative difference.
Yep.
Qualitative difference. Yeah.
I mean, obviously they're not as abundantly beautiful or biodiverse or anything like that. But the light's always the same, and
Yeah.
maybe that's the main thing. So I've done photographs in rivers and dams as well, which is crazy. I mean, like these man-made little ponds that have just got some water lilies in them or whatever. And you can
Yeah.
always find light. You can always find shadow and light, and so they. I mean, they're different environments, but the sort of the, the seeking for me is the same.
So I just got a few more questions. I just want to talk a little bit more about the diving. It was it's a difficult book for me to have like a critical distance from because um, I think it's the only novel I've ever read where I actually know all the characters, nearly all the landscapes, and even the one, all the settings, and even the ones where I don't. Are very easy for me to imagine. But it is beautifully written, and it's currently out of print, but you can still buy it on a Kindle. Do you think there were any plans to get it republished? And how do you feel about that book that you wrote some while ago?
I don't think it will be republished unless it gets republished by somebody else. I did. Somebody did ask me a while back if I wanted to just look into what the rights were and get it republished, but kind of am done with that book. I don't think it's a bad book, but it was. I don't know. I actually haven't read it for many years. So I also feel like I can't have an opinion on it because I know the characters so well and the setting so well. So um, I don't think I'm embarrassed by it.
You really
And
shouldn't be. That would
certainly
be ridiculous.
no. And but I mean, I've been trying to write recently, and I realize how incredibly out of practice I am. And so I probably would be surprised when I read that book again, if I do, um, that it was, it had life in it because I know now how difficult it is to write. now that I'm
Yeah.
not really, working in newspapers or doing writing on a daily basis.
It is hard.
I think it was a necessary. Yeah, it's so hard. I think it was a necessary book, though, for me to have written. Um, yeah, I think it was. I mean, it's a cliche, but I think it was quite cathartic, although it didn't solve any questions. Um, and I also was hoping that other people would be able to read it and not feel so lonely, because I think, suicide is can be very lonely to deal with.
Yeah. And life, full stop, can be pretty lonely. And I think that is one of the
Yeah.
key functions of art and literature, is to be our
Yeah.
companions and our guides in darkness. And I think it
Yeah.
certainly does a
Exactly.
good job of doing that. Um,
Thank you.
for me,
Yeah, I think.
it feels like a coming of age novel. And it's a very strange coming of age novel, the coming of age novel that is about death, which is not the normal kind of, sometimes there's, loss is normally incorporated into the genre, but it feels very much about the narrative. It feels more about you than about Richard. It feels about the writer kind of becoming something, gaining some kind of wholeness, even if that's illusory.
Yes, I agree with you.
Um,
I do agree with you. I think I'm always coming of age. I mean, do we ever stop coming of age?
I hope not, because that kind of probably means we're dead. Um, but I think so too. I feel the same way. I never thought about that. Like, obviously, I'm very, linked to like notions of vitality, and I want to live for a long time. But yeah, today I came of age, and tomorrow I will come of age again.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Exactly. Imagine if one wrote like novels like every single year, and it would just be like, and this is her coming of age novel, and this is her coming of age novel, and this, and then you're like 95. And this is her coming of age novel.
well, I'm not even sure I have. I
Brilliant.
think I maybe have one or two novels in me, and I think they will probably never get written. But that does sound exhausting.
It does, right? Imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible that someone's done it, because that is the kind of thing that human beings would do. Um, but we shouldn't do it.
Yeah. Well, we'll just,
I have one last
it's
question, which is
okay.
probably not a great last question,
Yes.
but
Yes.
I think it's a valuable question. I think it's important. Like you spoke about, like, the diving being a kind of solace, a kind of help, a kind of lamplight. But beyond people buying the book or buying the Kindle, like, you faced a lot of grief. As you said, you're like, all of your immediate family members have died, and that's not an easy thing to deal with. Um, and I know that there are no easy answers. But do you have advice for anybody who's going through the grieving process? Sorry.
That is a very, very difficult question, because we're all so different.
Maybe let me rephrase it. Do you have any advice to make it easier?
No. Sorry.
I think that may be a very good answer. I really like the seriousness in your face. I do think that grief is the one area in which words are almost entirely useless. We send our SMSs or our letters or our short messages of condolence, and they can be thoughts and prayers, or they can be incredibly heartfelt and real. But still, when you're that broken, I don't think there's much that helps. Other than time.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't have advice for people who are grieving, because I just think it's unresolvable in the moment, and even lifelong, it might just be unresolvable.
Yeah.
But for people who are dealing with people who are grieving, or your friends or relatives or whatever, I think just say something, even if it's thoughts and prayers. And even if the person receiving them just goes, whatever. But more than that, I think listening is just so important. And not being scared. That's what really, really, really made me quite angry after Richard died, was how scared people were. And how I felt like I was somehow grisly, particularly because it was a suicide. Somehow that I was some grisly, transformed monster. And it's, that might have just been my perception, but there were people who completely avoided me because they didn't know what to say. And it's not about you, for fuck's sakes, it's not about you.
Yeah.
Just, have compassion.
Well, I think that's actually very good advice. Because that makes sense. I think advice when you're in that when you're in that phase just really is no fucking good, actually. I think when people are in different stages of grief, they don't necessarily need advice. They just need presence and companion and the offer of a hug.
Exactly.
Because nothing's going to work.
Exactly. Nothing's going to work. A hug means more than anyone will ever know. A hug, even if it makes you dissolve into 1,000,000 tears, a hug, there's nothing actually better than a hug.
And even if you can't deal with it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, maybe not.
So now I've got to find a way to end this conversation. We've been talking for quite a while now. But I think maybe we just leave it at grief and the irreconcilability of grief and sadness, and that it's just something that we have to experience as human beings. Hopefully not as many times as Helen Walne has.
Well, yeah. But we will. We all have to. So, yeah. The conundrums.
Do you have a favorite, currently a favorite song or book or film or anything that you would like to recommend people to engage with or to read or to watch?
I should. Oh, I've been reading 2 memoirs by Sally Mann, the photographer, and I just love her writing so much. And I can't remember their names because my brain is rotten.
That's fine.
But one of them is quite easy. Yeah. I just love the way she writes, and I love the way she talks about photography. And but I love the way that she's not wanky. She's not wanky at all. And she loves gin. And she's just lovely.
I only really know her early photographs, which of course on a beach.
Yes, yes, and then of her children in the swamps and stuff. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay, so look out for Sally Mann and look out for Helen Walne. Helen, thank you so much for talking to me. But look, there's a doglet in the background. I just saw a little tail.
Can you see the doglet?
I just saw the tail that come into the room. That's lovely. Everybody, that is Manny. Named after Sally Mann, probably not.
Manfred.
Helen, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you as well. Thank you, Peter. It's been lovely. It's been really lovely.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Helen. For more conversations with creative minds, check out talktopeter.com, where you'll also find playlists, recommendations, and other useful resources. Have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are in the world. And thank you for listening.